All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of my show. If you're seeing this, then you're watching it on YouTube, I guess. And if you're just hearing it, then you're listening to it as a podcast. And my guest today is.
A. Will Brown, is that correct? Oh, wait.
That's right.
Okay. Um, and what is my name? That's an interesting question. I was going to introduce myself, but I'm like, I keep trying to come up with a new name. And even on the walk just now, I was like, you know what? I've been thinking I want to change my name to Spark. And then I was like, no, maybe I should make my name Spotlight, because then I want a name that would naturally segue into a show like, oh, welcome to the Spotlight with A. Will Brown, or welcome to Spark Conversation or something. But for now, my show is called Celebrity Josh, because I'm joshing around with celebrities, and I'm Josh, and I'm a celebrity, and all of that. What is the Well, here, a quick introduction to yourself, so then people can decide, oh, do I want to listen to this or not? Like, what are you you're into real estate, or you're a curator?
Sure. So I spent the last I'm Chicago-based, and I spent the last 8 years moving around the country as a contemporary art curator, and came to a bit of an impasse in my career, and I'm remaking myself as someone in the real estate industry. Currently studying for the broker's exam here in Chicago, and still pursuing curatorial work with contemporary artists, but no longer as my sole professional activity.
Okay, cool. I don't know if it was my internet that it was just cutting out at the beginning of that. Could you like just do the beginning part again? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. I am for the last 8 years, I've been a contemporary art curator, working at a couple different institutions, traveling around the country for my job and my career. And I've come to a bit of a transition stage, and I'm working in real estate now, studying for my broker's exam.
Okay, so maybe your passion is curation, but you're realizing there's not a lot of money in that, and you're looking for a backup plan, or is you know?
Yeah, of sorts. I mean, I went and got a master's degree in contemporary art curatorial studies, and did that somewhat foolishly after an art history degree in undergraduate, and realized after 7 or 8 years that there's a certain level that I was going to have to get to in order to continue that career, and the hurdles and obstacles became too much for me. I worked in a couple different museums, and it's a passion, but I approached it more as a job, more as a career, more as 9 to 5. But of course, it's more than a 9 to 5. But it's something I take with me in all my every day, my kind of skills and thinking around organizing and space and art. But yeah, it's no longer my professional aspiration to climb the institutional museum curator ladder.
Oh, and well, first of all, I just want to say I can see sort of behind you. Your apartment looks very well curated. There's a little picture there, and a little lamp, and the nice brick inside the fireplace. So, has your curating skills sort of curated your apartment, would you say?
Well, in a way, that's one of the things that brought me to curatorial work from the beginning, was that I grew up in a family of artists, and I was always interested in organizing space and sort of putting pieces together in a way that I found aesthetically pleasing or interesting. It's hard to do that when you're a kid and you have no budget or money or control. You sort of put things together as you can. But as I've reflected back in my career on why I spent so much time, in this curatorial world, I realized that I just love putting things together and making a kind of interesting composition. And I'm sort of translating that into real estate and thinking about how I can help people achieve the kind of aesthetic, pleasing, interesting spaces in their own lives and own some of those. And then they can go ahead and use their own way of organizing within those spaces.
That's interesting. So for those of us who don't know, including myself, what exactly is a curator? I guess that's the kind of person who works in museums, a museum curator. So you decide what's going to be in a museum or an art gallery?
Yeah. So The more kind of formal approach to curatorial work is someone who works in a museum or an institution who organizes exhibitions. So whenever you go to a museum and you see the new Picasso exhibition, that there was one person who was sort of the director, if you will, of that, the lead kind of designer, organizer, who did all of the kind of scholarly research and academic work to bring the work together into a kind of narrative, and then went about finding and gathering all those works, obviously with the help of many people within the institution. But most completely, a curator is somebody who makes exhibitions.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So specifically exhibitions, not just like the regular everyday kind of thing at a museum or something. Or no, I guess that is what museums are. They're exhibitions.
Yeah, exactly. Like every gallery you're in a museum, think about it like an exhibition, even if it's been there for 40 years and hasn't changed. Somebody put all those pieces together for a specific set of reasons. And a lot of curators who work at a collecting museum like the Met or the MoMA or the Art Institute of Chicago or the National Gallery of Canada or the US, they not only organize exhibitions, but they go about acquiring objects and works of art to be part of the permanent collection. So originally, and this is turning into like a history lesson, but it's important, I think, to note that originally the word curate really meant to protect and keep and secure an object. So it's really about caretaking. And that's where it led to building collections of objects and artworks. And then it was sort of collections of objects and artworks that were about ideas. And then in more contemporary times, there's lots of institutions that don't have collections, that are curators who just organize exhibitions and borrow objects, which is what I was doing for about half of my career, was working at places that didn't have collections. So the word and the idea has really shifted and changed, and contemporary culture has sort of taken a hold of the idea of curating and boiled it down to this idea about organizing and presenting things in a certain way that's more likely than not aesthetically pleasing to people, which I think is an interesting compliment to the kind of profession, but also a nice expansion of a term that was formerly used in very, very mostly elitist circles. So I'm glad that curating has a much broader sense of a role in the world now.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where I've specifically heard it used recently, but I feel like maybe when I read about minimalism, it's all about curate your apartment, like pick the isn't maybe Marie Kondo is that kind of thing. It's about sort of picking the specific things that in your apartment that you want there, and the other things you can declutter and get rid of, or maybe if you've got a bunch of old photos, you could curate a few of them to be on display and then move them around like at different seasons. Or it seems to be all about sort of minimalism and interior design and making a comfortable home these days. It also sounds a bit like you were Indiana Jones, gathering items around the world. Did it feel like that at all, or no?
I mean, so you could think of Indiana Jones as a curator because he worked for, he was a professor, right? But part of his duties were collecting and gathering objects to secure and for safekeeping. So, and they would go to, and it's Sean Connery plays his father, right?
Yeah.
And he's also a professor they're archaeologists, anthropologists, but I mean, I was never at the level, I wasn't quite at the level yet where I was in charge of a collection, where I would say, be the one spearheading the research and finding the specific objects, and then going to travel to look at them, make sure they were right, and track them down. But I was like my level at the first institution I worked at in Providence, Rhode Island. It's called the RISD Museum, Rhode Island School of Design. We would collect objects from artists from all over the world. So there's a sort of finding the thing, making sure it's safe, making sure it's clean and it's in good condition, and that you have to fill out a lot of paperwork. And sometimes you go into an old, the most Indiana Jones-ish part was going into the collection at the museum and looking at everything and realizing there were things that people hadn't seen or thought about in, 10 years that had become more interesting because of current developments in culture, or because a contemporary artist started making work about, X thing that happened 50 years ago that people hadn't thought about for a long time. So it was fun to dig in.
Oh, wow. Did you see the Ark of the Covenant in there anywhere?
No.
No. Oh, that's too bad.
No, and if I had, I would have
grabbed it or opened it up, and then your face would have melted. Well, I guess if you were evil, your face would melt, and then if you were good, it wouldn't. That's all pretty interesting. What would you say then, if curating sort of felt like a 9 to 5, but now you're going to real estate? Like, what would be your dream job? Do you have if you could choose anything or use your skills and interests for something, what would that be?
I think if I could pick, just without having to go get another master's degree, and forget all the hurdles, right? I think I would really like a couple things. One is to do some of the things that you do, which are voice acting. It could be super fun and interesting, and it's something I've sort of always done, not in any formal sense, but I've always played around with voices and done voices, and I'm sure a lot of people say that, but so that's something I would find really interesting and engaging. But another is more aligned, obviously, with what we've been talking about, is interior design. My partner, my wife, we share a lot of the same skills. She works in business field and in consulting, but we're both really interested in the kind of spaces and design and building and architecture. But she has this incredible skill of being able to walk into a room and seeing all of the things that it could be. And I am much better at walking into a room and seeing the best possible way to put together all of the elements that are there and add a few others. But so I say that to say that I'd love to do this, interior design thing would be the ideal, but knowing that there's somebody who lives with me who's probably just like head and shoulders better at it. So it's hard to say I want to do that, but that would be a real strong interest.
Well, I could see you two doing like a husband-wife team kind of thing. Like, she comes in and she's got her interior design sense, but you're like a museum curator. So now you're bringing that skill that all the regular interior designers wouldn't have. That would sound kind of posh to say, oh, I'm actually making my place like a museum. Because I was looking up online, I don't know, the past few years, I was always liking interior design, and I was always trying to decide on what couch to buy and stuff. And I was trying to find like a little class online. Like, is there just something I could do, like a weekend class or some mini course, so I would know, okay, here's how you pick a couch and here's how you arrange the carpet. But it didn't seem like there was anything. Everything seemed like it was going to be a 4-year college course and all this stuff. That's a side tangent. But yeah, I could also see, because I was going to ask you earlier, like, would you ever want to do like YouTubing and say, maybe a regular show where you just talk about items, like Antiques Roadshow or something. You're like, oh, here I'm curating, and today I'm talking about this, and how will you know if this is worth something? But maybe you could pitch a reality TV show or one of those, home network kind of things with your wife, where you go into places and she's the one who says what we should bring in, and you're like, oh, but here's what we can do, what's already there. Anyways, just some little ideas. And then, because you're also going into real estate as well, and they're always looking for personable real estate agents for all these real estate shows. So who knows, maybe there's a way to combine it all into some YouTube empire or TV empire.
Yeah, I think that would be super fun. It's a little part of the reason why I am transitioning out of the curatorial field is because I'm not the most me first. Not to say that people who have shows are, but I'm not necessarily good at demanding space for myself and my ideas, or seeking it out. But I think it could be really interesting to share the way I see the world aesthetically, interiors, exteriors, art, design, and find a way to present that publicly. It seems pretty daunting. And there's a million people out there who are super good at that, at the technical stuff, the non-technical stuff, but also have like, you check out some of these lifestyle Instagram accounts and you're like, that's exceptionally beautiful. How could I even compete? But I guess part of it is just going out there, doing it, putting out there your best possible presentation and seeing what happens.
Yeah, I'm in these Facebook groups all about, motivation and entrepreneurship and being creative. And the main issue everybody has is imposter syndrome. It's like, oh, other people are better, other people are doing it. Why would I be qualified to do this at all, kind of thing. But I think especially with creative stuff, nobody is better per se than somebody else. It's just different. So everybody's got their own style. So whatever you're bringing to the table is different than what other people have. It's all based on your own experiences and your own tastes and stuff. And so some people might like you, some people might like other people. And also there's a big enough world for everyone. Like even if there was a better interior designer, they don't have time to do every single person in the world's house. So everybody needs someone else. And yeah, I think it's important just to get your creativity out there. And if people like it and they're drawn to it, they will. And if it's not their cup of tea, then they won't have to look at it. And also, even if people are putting out things and it's not perfect or whatever, I think that encourages other people to do it. So they say, hey, you know what, they're doing it and they're pushing past their fears, and maybe it's not the perfect thing, but if they're doing it, then I can do my art too. So I think there's always nothing but goodness that can come from just putting yourself out there and seeing what comes of it. But I think that's also a sign of intelligence when people are like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. I don't know. There's other people, like you recognize that what your flaws are, or what maybe you haven't, achieved your perfect level of things. But that's the problem, because then the people who think, oh, I'm perfect, I'm great, I'm whatever, they're the ones who have the confidence to go out and do it. So I think
those are they get the most attention often, and perhaps the most attention isn't the best attention. But how did you get started in this? You seem to occupy many different roles that I assume are all interests or passions. And how did you begin down some of these roads?
Yeah, I've always loved being creative. Even when I was 5, I wrote a couple of stories about an ant that wanted to make friends, and I drew the pictures. And then, I got into fine arts at a couple of universities, but I decided to just do a general education at a liberal arts college and wound up majoring in psych. And then afterwards, my mom found an article about a copywriting program at a college. I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. I think on the TV show 30 something, people were working at an ad agency and they were playing basketball in the office and stuff. I'm like, that looks fun. So I took copywriting for a year, and then I wound up working in advertising. And at the same time, okay, we're back. Yeah, that was super weird. It just ended and said ended call. And when would you like to schedule another call? It's almost like we had booked a 20-minute call and then it was over and Skype decided that was it. That's totally weird. Maybe who owns Skype? Let's see, Microsoft owns Skype now, I think, or something. So Bill Gates, what's he up to? Is he watching all the calls and going, yeah, you know what, I've had enough of this? Or maybe he was like, you know what, I've heard enough of. I wanted to hear what A. Will Brown is up to, and I've heard what Josh is up to, and I'm not interested in that anymore. But anyways, I'll just continue.
You were saying you took a copywriting course, right?
Yeah, so I got into advertising, and then at the same time, I'd always been interested in other stuff. I started doing stand-up comedy nights when I was in university, and taking Second City improv classes. And somebody in university showed me how to play guitar a little bit, and I've always liked drawing. So I was just always working on that, and I occasionally would try to contact people in the radio business and then send them I made a little demo tape of me asking some questions of people in a mall, or I should have pursued radio more, I think. If I could go back, I would have. I don't even know if this existed then, but it must have, like a college radio course instead of copywriting. It didn't occur to me that there was, and then if I could go back also, I would have just packed up and gone to LA and done stand-up every night of the week and not been like, oh no, I have to have a job. I've got to work a job and make money, and because money comes and goes, but your time doesn't come back. And then at the same time, I acted in a couple of radio commercials that I wrote when I was first working in Ottawa, and then I had a little cassette tape that I mailed around to all the talent agencies, and wound up started doing voice acting occasionally. And that's it. And then I left my copywriting job 5 years ago. I'm like, I want to be free to travel because now I can do my work from anywhere. I can do it on a laptop. And then I sold my condo last summer so I could be even more free to travel. And now, of course, with the pandemic, there's no traveling at all. But fortunately, we have the internet, because I've actually been saying for years I should start interviewing people over Skype, over webcam, because then I could interview people anywhere in the world. And so finally, I've started doing that the past couple of weeks. So I'm liking that. And I'm hoping this, I don't know, it could be some kind of maybe it's just, it is what it is. People enjoy the interviews and it becomes popular, like Mark Maron's podcast, or Joe Rogan just interviews different interesting people every day. But if I could have my perfect life, I would be doing something. I mean, I would love a talk show like Jimmy Kimmel, where you get to interview celebrities and also do some stand-up. And then, but I'd also like to be Larry David, sort of write a TV show where I play a goofy version of myself, but also doing stand-up at the same time. And Mark Maron's kind of doing that. He does his podcast, but then tours around doing stand-up, and so does Joe Rogan. So yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, it's all, things change all the time too. Like TikTok is the big thing now, and that wasn't around until recently. It used to be like when Seinfeld was starting, like you do stand-up in clubs, and then, you know, if you can get a spot on the Tonight Show, that's your big break, and then you ride that forever, and then maybe you get a sitcom. But now there's YouTube and stuff, and people can build their own career online. And in fact, during the pandemic, that's the only way to do it, because nobody can go anywhere. And even Jimmy Kimmel is interviewing people over Skype. So I think I just actually saw a little post on an entrepreneur Instagram thing just a half an hour ago. And it was like 5 things to quit doing now. It's this guy, Paul, at Paul. I don't know who he is, but he's got 1 million followers. And it said 5 things to stop doing now. And one of them was, living in the past, and what else was it? Thinking negative, and I'd have to check it. But yeah, so there's no point in living in the past. You just got to keep working on new things and see what happens. So yeah, I would like to. I just regret, I guess, not going full hog on the comedy and that kind of stuff for a long time. But it was tougher before the internet. Like I had a VHS tape that I guess sometimes I would film. I don't know what it was even on there, but maybe I'd film something and then try to submit it for TV Ontario's kid show host things. But there wasn't although YouTube's been around for 15 years, so there's not really an excuse for why I still haven't become famous. A friend of mine in university, I remember I think it was at a pub or something, he told me once, he's like, you know what? I think you're destined for posthumous fame. People won't get you in your lifetime, but after you die, they'll be like, oh, wow, he was really interesting, creative and stuff. And that still sticks in my head. I'm like, I don't want him to be right. So I feel like it. Yeah.
It's nice to be appreciated for the things you work at, try hard at, are good at, are interested in while you're around.
Yeah, people keep saying, "Oh, it's about your legacy and how will you be remembered." I don't care how I'll be remembered. Like that doesn't affect me at all.
Right.
I don't want to be like Van Gogh, where afterwards everybody's like, "Oh, wow, he was so great," or whatever. It's like that doesn't help me.
It's sort of like it's the reverse too. The people who are like only care about how they're going to be remembered often are not often, but in many historic cases are horrible people who are so concerned. And 100 years from now, people are going to remember me because of this. But day to day, what's the point if you're awful and people don't like you?
Right. All the, like a great dictator is like, I want to be remembered. I want statues. It's like, okay, but you got to be nice to people now. Yes, it's something I keep seeing. I got to get off Instagram, but there's all these little bits of wisdom. Like there's no past and there's no future. All we have is the exact moment. But then other people saying, but you're never in the moment. By the time you're sort of aware of the moment, it's already passed. It's all very it's like if you're a centipede or a caterpillar and you start trying to think of like which leg is walking first, you'll just be paralyzed. You just got to not think about this kind of stuff and just do it. And then, yeah, and that's the other thing I've been realizing. It's like, oh, I just want to travel around or whatever. But like, oh, now I'm wishing I had kids and a wife and stuff 20 years ago. So I'm glad you've got a partner, and especially one that you can be creative with. I think that would be very cool to have somebody at least with sort of similar interests that you can sort of compare notes or maybe work on things together or discuss things. I think it would be tougher to be with someone who doesn't share your interests at all, because then I don't know. I think that would be lonely. I don't know. I think it'd be cool to be like a power couple.
Yeah, it's fun to have a person, have your partner be someone who understands the kind of aesthetic things that you deeply value and also values them. I mean, we do get in these little like, no, the picture should go 3 inches that way or 3 inches this way, or the plant should go there, and if it doesn't go there, it's wrong. But we usually, we both fall prey to that, but we usually figure it out without too much hassle.
Oh, that's true. I should have realized that. That'd be crazy. Because I would think, I've never lived with anyone, but I imagine it would be tough enough for two regular people to be like, okay, whose furniture are we using or what are we doing? But if you're both really into interior design, it could be fun in a way, but it could be, maybe you have to assign each other or, individual rooms. Like, listen, that's your room, this is my room. And then somehow you compromise on the living room or whatever.
Yeah. We're lucky that we like most of the same things generally.
What city are you in?
We live in Chicago, but so we've been here for almost a year, and 3 years before that we were in Cleveland, and the 3 years before that we were in Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay.
And how did 3 years before that I was in Oakland, California, and the 4 years before that I was in Baltimore, and the 20 years before that I was in Philadelphia.
Oh wow! So you've been everywhere. That's kind of cool too. I've just been sort of bumping between Toronto and Ottawa. I've never taken the leap. I mean, it's harder, I guess, if you don't have a visa to move somewhere, but I could technically be living in the States, I guess, and just doing my stuff online, and I never did it. And then finally I started traveling at the beginning of March. I went to a podcast festival in Orlando, and then I'm like, I went down to Tampa for a bit, and then in Miami for a night, and then the pandemic was hitting. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. But I was chatting with a woman on Facebook today who, she's somehow in real estate in Orlando, and she says, hey, you could come sit by the pool and promote Orlando Dream Real Estate Project or something from the pool. And I said, what's your website? She's like, I'm still working on my website, so I don't know what her business is. But I always thought it'd be interesting to live in Celebration, Florida, this perfect little village that Walt Disney built or whatever. What are you going to be, like a real estate agent then, or what is it in real estate that you're doing?
Yeah, I was interested initially in all of the kind of aesthetic parts of real estate, like design and staging houses, and then realized I should just get a broker's license as a kind of through line, and then can decide how to take that from there. But I'm taking my broker's exam on Monday. So I'll start as a real estate agent, and then see, how I like it, what I like about it. What if I want to? You can work in an office. You can work independently. You can use that in a lot of different ways. I could go and start doing appraisals if I wanted to. You have to get a different certification, but it's a very broad field, obviously, but it's one that has, the more work you put in, there's a strong correlation to actually getting compensated, which is not necessarily true in my past life. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to be doing something where there's, I'm helping people buy and sell homes and live in places that they want to live in, and B, that I can have access to look at and be in a lot of different houses and spaces, but also to be for the first time in a field where my time and hard work is sort of compensated a little more fairly.
Yeah, I imagine it's sometimes in sort of corporate positions or whatever, it's almost the more work you do, people get mad because then you're making them look bad, or if it's a salary position, yeah, you could work your butt off, but you're not getting paid any more than you were. So it's kind of like socialism. You're like, well, why would I work hard then?
Well, and the curatorial, curatorial work is notoriously poorly paid, in part or large part from the historic precedent that those who could afford to be curators were people who were already wealthy. So when the kind of jobs started to be formed, when those roles in the early 20th century, it was people who already had collections or were basically wealthy patrons of institutions who had a lot of deep knowledge about art and art history, but didn't need to get paid very much to work a full-time or more job. So that's carried over in a lot of ways. And people who have advanced degrees are really underpaid and undercompensated in a way that it was detrimental to me, but for many people, I think it borders on criminal in a way that it's just not sustainable and it's just not fair. And that's part of what drove me away from continuing down that path.
That's too bad, because I've been thinking lately too about how people who go into fields where they're curating items or they know about history or whatever, it's all important, because otherwise how do we know this stuff? Like, to teach the history of World War II or the history of Greek art or whatever, so people have to keep learning it and then passing it on, and if it just disappears, nobody knows anything anymore. So it's too bad we can't compensate it to make it viable. I was thinking of going
like teachers, I mean, at least in the States, teachers who teach at public school here, they're paid terribly for the most part, and especially young teachers starting out. And they have to pay for things like the supplies in their classroom. I mean, these are the people who are helping shape the minds of our children, who are going to help shape the world. You'd think we would pay them pretty well and train them in a way that is sustainable for them, but no, of course not. Anyway, that's a long path. You were saying you were thinking about getting into, and
teaching. Yeah, I was actually thinking of getting into teaching as well. Recently I was like, I wish I had become a teacher. I'm like, that would have been fun. I would have been entertaining to the kids, and because I miss school a lot. I miss the environment and being around, young minds, and then having the teachers as colleagues and growing with them. And I don't know, it also, and I'm like, so yeah, there's a lot of paths I start thinking about that I'm like, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd done that. So I regret that. But then I was going to say, I'd been thinking recently about, maybe I should go into real estate, because I interviewed probably like literally 100 real estate agents when I was selling my condo last year, because I was like, I didn't really understand what they did or how it worked, and I'm like, which agent would be best, and so I sort of learned a lot about what it is they do, and I started thinking maybe I should do this myself, because I'm personable. I like to promote myself and do social media, and then I was talking to a friend actually that I knew when I was in like public school, that he's a broker, I guess. And so I had to learn the difference between what's an agent, and then he's a broker. So then agents can be under him, but he's got his own little brokerage so that he doesn't have anybody under him. It's just him. But he was saying maybe I could take the course and then be under him. But then I looked into it and I was like, it's pretty expensive, and it would take I think it was at least 10 months or a year or something of studies. And I was like, maybe that's not the best use of what I do. I started thinking maybe I'd be better off promoting an agent. Like, I actually messaged one real estate agent a couple years ago, and I wound up going to an apartment or a condo he was selling, and I filmed an interview with him for 10 minutes, and he paid me like, what was it, $100 or $200 or something. Actually, yeah. And now I remember, because my brokerage friend Dallas, he told me, charge $199, because like under $200, that's a budget they have usually for photos for their, and that's Canadian dollars. So for you, it'd be more like 150 or something. It's the budget they'd have for photos and whatever. So they wouldn't really blink at that. But you go higher, they might be, So yeah, I think I charged them $199, and I thought that was kind of fun. So maybe, because some agents do their own social media, they're really personal, they're all out there. But others are kind of like, that's not their thing. So they might appreciate me saying, hey, I'm going to come in and make a fun video for your apartment. But I haven't really pursued that anymore either. I guess almost everything I do now, I start thinking like, is this the best use of my time? Is this where does this represent what I want to achieve? Like, if I became the most famous real estate agent guy in the world, would I be satisfied? And probably not. but I feel like if I did become a big interviewer with a talk show, that would be kind of my dream thing. So that's why I'm trying to put my time, not that it pays me any money yet, but trying to put my time into that for now, because that's where I want to be. So it's good. And that would be my advice to anyone, I guess, listening, would be, yeah, figure out what your dream is and then work towards that. Don't spend 20 years just working at some job because you figure, oh, I need a job and I'll work on my other stuff. I mean, you still need money and stuff, but if there is something you're really passionate about, figure out how to do that from the beginning, because you don't want to live regrets. Do you have advice to people who might want to get into curation or real estate or interior design or have a wife one day or live in Chicago?
Well, before you get into curatorial work, seriously consider how much time you're going to put into your education, how much money, and how much you might get in return. And also seriously consider how competitive the field is. There are very few jobs. Those jobs are very competitive, and people who get them, if they can, tend to stay in them for as long as possible, in more traditional roles. In more contemporary focused roles in institutions, my path as someone who's moved 3 times for my job, essentially, you have to move kind of every 3 or 4 years until you get into a certain level. So if you want to move a lot, see a lot of new things, meet a lot of new people, constantly be exposed to new art, and that's a part of your kind of fabric, is going out and investigating the new, then it's a fantastic thing to do. But if you're somebody who wants a kind of stable life where you can then pursue your passions, whether it be interviewing people online or going fishing or also making exhibitions, but you kind of need the baseline of stability, it's probably not the best thing for you. Real estate, I'm just beginning, so I don't even know if I will have a license yet as of next week. But so far it seems like a field that has many, many uses, avenues, applications, and it's one that will most for perpetuity be needed, and be something where there'll be work. I'm in touch with a couple brokers here who are, I'm giving them little updates. I've gotten this far through my coursework and yada, yada, yada. And they say, cool, well, deals are still happening, so let me know when you're finished. So I don't know. We'll see. It may last for me. It may not, but I'm excited about the prospect of something new that is engaged with a lot of the things I'm already interested in. Those are my advices. Be nice to people. Be nice to each other. Wear a mask if you're out in public right now. And yeah, I think that's all I got.
Yeah, no, that's all good advice. What was I going to say? Yeah, in terms of the curator, yeah, it does seem like, I guess, especially with the traditional curation, that's one of the few jobs, or one of the jobs where the longer you're in it, it's actually maybe a good thing. Like even in advertising, it's like, yeah, I've got knowledge and wisdom, but there's always a new crop of 20-year-olds that are cheap and hip and whatever. And so, unless you're running your own agency, you're kind of like, oh, what am I doing? And I guess maybe being a lawyer, you can grow into it, kind of thing. But it seems like it'd be cool to be an old wise curator and have all, because you have more knowledge and history. Like that'd be kind of cool. And it would be cool to travel around and find art and stuff. I guess if you had a wife that wanted to do that too, that would be cool. And then real estate, yeah, I can't remember what I was going to say about that, but I'm sure you'll get your license. I met a lot of real estate agents that were maybe a lot less, let's say, qualified than you. So it seems like there's a very low bar to get into real estate. That's why there's so many real estate agents, and they were all telling me how they're in the top 1%. But I'm like, you can't all be the top 1%. I don't know how any of this works. But
and I think the top 1% is changing pretty constantly. Even if they are, that tomorrow they might not be. It's a weird. A lot of people rotate in and out of the field, or do it for a year and then are dormant, or sort of do it, and it seems so different from what I'm used to, but in terms of the career. But that's I'm looking for something that will allow me to take a month off and go on a trip when I can go on a trip again and go do something. But yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah. Well, first of all, that reminded me of, like I listened to a lot to the Ben Shapiro podcast. He's this conservative podcaster, but he talks a lot about the 1%. He's like, what people don't realize is there isn't. It's a fluid thing. It's just a statistical thing. So it's not like there's 100 people that are the 1% and they never leave. People go into the 1%, they come out. People get rich, they lose money. So it's a fluid thing. It's just there's always going to be 1% of something that is the top 1%, like whatever. So first of all, and then it does seem like a good field for you because it is, you control your own destiny. You can decide if you want to work. You can decide if you want to go away. If you hustle, you control how much you're making. And yeah, if you do get a sale and you get 20 grand out of it, it's like, boom, that feels like you've actually done something rather than busting your butt for $5 an hour or whatever. So I think you'll enjoy it. But the other thing I was going to say is that it's not a bad thing to say you tried curating and then maybe you changed a bit and maybe the career changed a bit and now you're trying something else. And there's new ways to do real estate now with technology. So I think people can always change and adapt. And I should sort of embrace this myself too, just because I'm like, oh, I should have done this 20 years ago. Well, maybe that wasn't possible 20 years ago. Even doing conversations like this wasn't possible until recently. So yeah, it's totally cool to decide, hey, I want to try something else now. And also, what was it? Oh yeah, I think it's Rachel Hollis, some entrepreneur podcaster. She talks about how she started off just doing a cooking blog or something, but then people were so interested in how she was making money with her blog and all this. She now teaches people how to run their own businesses online. And so she didn't know what her path was going to be. You just have to start doing something. And yeah, who knows where the real estate business will take you, or it'll be fun too, because you'll be meeting so many new people. Maybe somebody will say, hey, I'm a rich, wealthy patron. I have my own museum. I want you to come curate it, or hey, let's team up and do something. Who knows? So yeah, every day.
Yeah, I think that's cool. And I want to mirror that back to you, that it sounds like, I mean, I've had plenty of things that I've thought, oh, I wish I could have, I should have, this would have been great. But it sounds like you've had some of those too, but you're doing a thing now that seems interesting to you, exciting, fun, that could lead in as many directions as there are as people who you talk to who have 10 directions each person, and it aligns with your long-term goals. So I think that's great and that's exciting, and fruit will come of all these interviews for sure.
Yeah, and even if it doesn't, what I like about it is that I just like talking to people.
Well, that's one of the fruits.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, even if it doesn't make money or whatever, it's like, what this gives me an excuse to talk to people I wouldn't otherwise, I guess I could be doing the lunch club thing and chatting anyways, but this gives me, recording conversations like this also allows me to talk to people, but also make content out of it. I was on a plane to Israel 5 or 6 years ago, and I was, I had a job. So I'm like, I'm going to fly first class so I can sleep well on the plane and everything. And the girl behind me looked familiar, and I Googled her, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Bar Raffaelli. Used to be like supermodel Leonardo DiCaprio's ex-girlfriend. And I texted a friend, and he's like, oh, she was just on the Howard Stern show. And I told myself, when I get back to Toronto, I've got to have got to start my own podcast or something, so my own show, so that next time I meet a supermodel or anyone interesting, I can be like, here's my card. You got to come on my show. And so now I've got my little show. So that's, it's a fun thing. I can't remember. And then also, just speaking of Israel, I just saw a tweet today that there was a 21-year-old kid that in the army, and they were doing like an arrest, and he got hit by a rock in the head and died. So it's like, and he's 21. It was his father's only son, and so it just makes you realize, as much as you're like, oh, I should have done this 20 years ago, not everybody gets more time. You could be 21 and get killed, or that famous YouTuber girl who had cystic fibrosis, I think, and just died at like 20 and stuff. So, you can't just keep going back and wishing you were that age. It's like, you never know. Everybody's got a different path. So you just got to enjoy each day. And I think my dream will be to be like Bill Maher. He's been sitting in his backyard doing his show every day, and it just looks so nice with his nice nature, and he's telling his jokes. And that's why I thought, if I'm on the porch, I'm kind of like Bill Maher, but I think I got to be in LA. Got to be in LA where it's warmer. And actually, I don't. If people were watching this, they noticed me moving. You were cutting out, so I didn't know if it was your internet or my internet. So I just came inside, and I'm closer to the modem, but I'm just sitting upstairs near my dad's bedroom on the floor here. But that's what I can do, right? I feel like my computer's so old and slow now that it's hard to record, and it's also there's no Wi-Fi in the basement, and I haven't bought Wi-Fi in the basement yet. But I feel like, you know what, I can do this just on my phone with my headphones and the little mic, because I was so worried about how was I going to record it, and I was also looking at there's something called Squadcast, where actually I'll share a link to that. I have an affiliate link for it, but it's in the description below. But they record you on your end and on my end, and then you get a mix of the sound. So it sounds like we were in the same room a bit. So whereas with Skype, when you're recording it, it just, it's recording online, so it's not perfect sound. But Squadcast is working on the ability to record the video. But they don't have it yet. Although you can see each other, it just won't make the video of it. So you could technically film the laptop. Anyways, I overthink all that stuff, and I realized, you know what? Just record in Skype. I know how to do it. I get a little video. I can put it on YouTube. I can take the audio, put it on a podcast, and I don't think it has to be the perfect sound. I think if people are interested in it, they'll get it. They'll enjoy it, and yeah. So just my message to everyone is just do it. Just start today and just bang this stuff out, and you can keep changing it and adapting it. And if this show becomes huge and I'm making $75,000 per show or whatever Joe Rogan's making, maybe he's making more than that. It's something crazy. Then sure, I'll build a home studio in Santa Monica and people can come visit me there. Or Barack Obama can come to my garage like he did for Mark Maron. And Jennifer Lawrence, she's very welcome. That would be my dream interview. Oh, and actually that takes me back to what I was going to say at the very beginning when you were saying you're a curator. I think she married some kind of art gallery curator or something, some guy she met in New York.
Yeah, she married he was a director at a contemporary art gallery, a very big one, well-known one. So yeah, she married like the commercial art version of me, of like what I would do.
Wow.
There's a bit of this trend recently of like celebrity women. Chloe Sevigny also has, I don't think they're married, but it's just had a baby with a similar kind of a director at a contemporary art gallery. It's just a weird, like, go get yourself like a curator boy man person for some of these celebrities. And I mean, I'm sure that, if they got married, they love each other and are having, I hope, a nice union no matter what. But there was a bit of a like go get a curator in vogue,
really,
which is really bizarre. And I had a moment where I was like, when am I going to find like my celebrity woman? But I'm not the kind of person who wanted to ever to live in or move to New York for work, so forget about it. I was going to say something about I think a potential title for something could be closer to the modem. I liked when you said that. You said I'm closer to the modem.
That's not a bad idea.
Closer to the modem.
And then maybe I could make my stage name The Modem, and then it would like fit. Because I was just on my walk just now.
Or like DSL or something. Closer to the modem with DSL.
DSL. Yeah, that sounds kind of like a rapper name. I keep thinking, like, whatever name I come up with, I'm like, I got to make sure it's not taken on Instagram, but everything's taken on Instagram. Somebody has, I just checked before this, like @Spotlight, but they're not posting anything. And somebody has @Spark, and, Spark.com's taken, but even Sting just has @official Sting. So I don't think you can choose your name based on, what Instagram word has been taken already, because then you'll never get anything. But that's just blowing my mind that okay, so here's the modem. We're right beside it. So there's no excuse now.
It's like Zach Galifianakis is between two ferns.
Right. And here's
close to the modem.
Yeah, it's not bad. I was going to originally call my show like at my old condo, like in the closet or whatever, because I was going to record in the closet, but that sounds like a whole different thing. This is blowing my mind though, that there was a celebrities marrying curators thing. Like I just thought it happened to be that Jennifer Lawrence, like, whoever I don't know how she met that guy, met him on the street or something. And then happen to be this, but if she was seeking him out, maybe I could still become a curator, because that's my dream. I'm like, I wanted to become a celebrity on my own, but I'm realized that's not going to happen. That's too hard. I just want to be that guy. Everybody's like, what? Like kind of like a Notting Hill thing where like Julia Roberts discovers Hugh Grant and he's a bookseller, or like even Jessica Alba just married, a random PA on set. I'm like, but also like Tom Green he's from Ottawa. He was doing community cable shows like I was at the same time. And he went and married Drew Barrymore. He went to the end of LA, but he did get on MTV. You sort of have to get somehow. I don't know, man. I still have hopes for Jennifer Lawrence. I was at a press conference a couple of years ago. I had a media pass, and she was there with her old boyfriend, the director guy. And I sat there for 20 minutes trying to come up with a great question, and I just didn't get one in time. And I'm like, that was my chance, because she would have been like, hey, you're really funny. And now she's met this other guy, but I guess I can still get her on the rebound. Like, because I don't know, on all the talk shows, she talked about how she had a crush on Woody Allen and she had a crush on Larry David. And I'm like, then she would like me. I don't know, man. But everybody's
I don't know if Woody Allen is a good person to be.
Yeah, no, that's
deeply aligned with right now. But I know that's not what you were saying. But
yeah, I mean, when I was younger, or when I was like 12 or something, the parents of other kids at school were like, hey, you're like Woody Allen. I'm like, who's Woody Allen? And then in university, I saw his movies. I'm like, oh my God, I am Woody Allen. And I actually looked like him too. Yeah, no, I can't reference him anymore. So I gotta come up with other stuff. Although maybe she never mentioned Woody. I feel like she did, but definitely she said she had a crush on Larry David. Because she's kind of, well, obviously she's always liked the, whatever. Now she likes, I was going to say older guys, but now she likes the Curator. Whatever. I'll keep working on it. Maybe I keep thinking that's the other reason. If I do a show like this, I feel like, the more you get out there, the more likely somebody who's like, your special someone is going to be like, oh, hey, I just saw, they'll notice you. Like my last girlfriend, she's read a couple articles about me in the paper and decided to contact me. And so I feel like you got to be out there to, how did you meet your wife? I guess we can end with that story, unless you don't even want to say.
Sure. We met on the internet. We met on OkCupid, which is, one of the bigger, I guess, dating sites.
Yeah.
And had all this weird stuff in common. Like we went to the same very small summer camp in Vermont when we were kids. We weren't there at the same time, but we both went there. Her great aunt used to teach at the school I went to growing up. And then we had some other family friends in common. So we didn't know each other, but we had these sort of touch points that made it really much easier to kind of lay down an initial trust and an initial sort of, I understand you as a person, or as a person in the world. But yeah, we met online, which is cool. I'd done a lot of online dating, which at times was, when I was in graduate school in California, was like go on like 5 or 6 dates a week sometimes, and none of them were particularly fulfilling. Or then like the ones you really wanted, the dates you really liked, that you had like, I had a great time tonight, the next day the woman was like, not interested, or the ones. And then there were a few times when it lined up, and that was fun, but it was hard. It became more of a thing to do than an actual pursuit of a meaningful relationship. The less you're looking, the sooner things come, it seems to me. That's always the way it goes.
Yeah, and that's what they say. The problem is, as you get older, you feel like time's running out, and it's harder to not look and just live your life kind of thing. But the best girlfriends I ever did have were, the very first girl in university, and it's like, why did I break up with her for no reason? You just think, I'll see what else is out there. I think I realized I just hurt myself for no reason. I push myself away from things I like. I don't know why. But then, over the years, I used to meet people at bars, but then online as well.
Hello, brief intermission here to let you know that there's an edit point here. Normally I like the podcast to run in its full raw form, so you're getting everything, but I've decided to edit out an 8-minute discussion about my frustrations over online dating and the dating apps and the dating sites. And so there is a little fast forward we're going to do here. And that's why it's July 12th, actually, which is 2 months after I recorded the original podcast. It's because I'm like, I got to sit down and find that part to edit. And I also had to revoice the very beginning because the Skype audio cut out. So there's, my voice sounds a little different at the beginning, you might have noticed. But anyways, maybe I'll play the whole thing for you another time. You can message me if you really want to hear it. But yeah, now we're just going to skip forward 8 minutes and back to the discussion.
But the best people I've ever met were either in university or in bars. One girl I met on JDate, she was good. And then this other girl, I think it was Lava Life. She was just doing research for a movie she was writing, and then she liked my profile, and so she signed up just so she could write to me, and we wound up making movies together. And then my last girlfriend, she read an article about me in the paper about eco dating, and then she's like, oh, he's just looking for dating. But then a year later, she saw another article about me in the paper, how I pick up litter, and 2 of her friends sent it to her. She's like, yeah, okay, I better email this guy. And so we wound up dating, and I probably should have just married her and had kids with her, but oh well, you never know what's going to happen. I've spent the past couple of weeks contacting all my old high school and university friends because I regret not spending 30 years talking to them. And yeah, some of them never had kids. Some of them are getting a divorce now. Some of them are having new kids now. So it's everybody's, got a different path. Not everybody's got the perfect life where they got married at 20 and they've lived this beautiful life and now they have grandkids and whatever. So who knows? Just got to take it day by day.
Half of those people are unhappy and bored anyway,
Well, that's what everybody tells me. Actually, I contacted my another old girlfriend that I dated briefly, and then this other guy in my comedy troupe wound up dating her, and she's like, yeah, she's got a couple of grown kids, but I think they've got special needs, and she's like, ugh. And I'm like, some people, I've met people lately that are younger than me or I met a woman who's got grandkids, and she's like, yeah, no, I told them no kids for like 15 years, and yeah, so what did she say? She was common law for years, and now she's divorced. So yeah, I think even everybody says the grass is greener. Like an old best friend of mine was like, oh, I envy you. Like he's got a couple of new kids, and he's like, but if I didn't have the wife and kids, I could be playing poker. I could be playing hockey. I could be doing all this stuff. So the grass is always greener. And I'm sure if I'd gotten married 20 years ago and I was where I am now, I'd be like, oh, I could have been on Saturday Night Live, and it's all because I got married and had kids and whatever. So you never know. But I think everywhere there's an alternate path where it's worse than, I could have gotten hit by a bus 20 years ago if I had done something different or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
So you could get hit by a bus tomorrow.
Exactly.
Walk outside. I have one. This is all reminding me of one. It's slightly misplaced, but story about fame/non-fame, which is that it comes from anywhere and nowhere and all angles, and you never know. And that I got a call one day from a casting agency while I was assistant curator at a museum, and they were like, we are really interested in talking to you because we have a role that we think you might be really good at, or like we're just interested to hear if you're interested in this. And I called back and I was like, I don't know who you are. I thought it was spam. I don't know who you are, why you're calling me, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say and they sounded legit. And then I looked up the agency and the person, and they were real. And they were like, we're casting for Queer Eye. And the next Queer Eye is going to have like an art guy, like an art person. And we think that you'd be a perfect person to try out for. And what I didn't say is that they first didn't tell me it was Queer Eye, but they were like casting for an all-male TV show that has 6 guys that do different things. And the one that we like for you is to be the art kind of cultural entrepreneur representative. And I was like, cool, let's do it. And she was like, okay, there's one thing. Are you gay? I was like, is it really a prerequisite? And she was like, yes, because it's a Queer Eye. So you never know, like when some weird shit's you're gonna get a weird call. But I had this moment where I was like, oh, I had my opportunity to maybe be famous or do something really cool and bizarre in public life. But oh well, I just couldn't do it for this one little detail.
Oh, I thought you meant they were looking like the Queer Eyes were going to make you over, but they were looking for you to be one of the Queer Eyes.
Yeah, they were like, oh, they found me online and they were like, oh, this guy is interesting. he's totally gay, and let's get him cast for this show. And then they talked to me, and they're like, oh, you're not gay though. This sucks.
Wow. And it seems like that should be illegal, like to just not let you do something because of that.
Kind of. I think she was much more sensitive about the language and why, but I do appreciate that if I was on the show and wasn't, then I would be basically playing. It would be offensive for me to be pretending just so I could get this role, when there's plenty of actually gay guys, or queer guys rather. I don't know so much about the show, but who are as interesting or as culturally whatever as I may be.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't be in short supply for gay curators or whatever. Wow. Were you tempted though to go, yeah, sure, gay, whatever?
Yeah, I was like, can I just pretend? And she was like, no, because you told me I can't. Like,
see, that's the thing. If you had just said yes, what are they going to do? We need to see you have sex with a man to prove it? Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
But it would have been like the movie Tootsie. At some point, you would have had to reveal yourself or something, like, wow.
Yeah, can you carry on the lie? 10 years later, I'm like, I've changed my identity back in straight now. I didn't want to get into all that crap. I was just a casting call, right? They probably had 20 other people. So who knows?
Would be fascinating though. Like it would be a good movie, the story of that. And then, of course, like in Tootsie, you'd meet a woman and you're like, I'm in love with this woman now, but you can't because you have to be gay. And also, I guess it would ruin your ability to meet women because they'd all assume you were gay because you're saying you're gay. Oh, it would be a whole thing.
Hello, me again. It's the day after I was editing the other part out, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to edit another part out because, I don't know, jokes and sarcasm, they don't seem to come across very well these days. So we're going to skip ahead 1 minute and 20 seconds and back to the podcast.
But you do have kind of a Christian Bale look. I would cast you in something.
Well, thank you. That's my hair inspiration right now. The Batman, Christian Bale Batman hair.
Oh yeah, or American Psycho too. Have you seen that movie?
No, I have.
Cool. Well, maybe you could be my. Did you say that's the bad Christian Bale?
I mean, yeah, he's a horrible human being, but
oh right,
he did good. He did a good job.
Right. Also, another lesson for don't be a serial killer, people. That's a bad thing. I'm not condoning that at all as well. That was shot in Toronto, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think at the end there, like his work is kind of the TD Towers near where I used to live and stuff. Pretty cool. Yeah, he's doing all right for himself. Huh. Maybe he'll come on my show sometime. But in the meantime, you could be my regular curation correspondent. I'll be like, hey, and that was my last question. What, like, A. Will Brown, like, how did you come up with that name?
So, my first name is Alexander, and I've always gone by Will. My family does this thing where we go by our middle name, which I don't know why, but that's why I've always gone by Will. But in graduate school, towards the end of graduate school, this group, I think I'd already started calling myself A. Will just because I kind of liked it. But this group of artists took over an art space that I had been working at prior. And the art space I was working at closed. It was a small gallery project space. And they were like, hey, there were 3 artists, sort of curators, and they were like, we're starting this like conceptual project, and we like you, and we really like your name, and we want to name the gallery Will Brown. And I was like, okay, cool, naively. And so they named this gallery Will Brown, partially because I had worked there before, but mostly because they liked my name, and because there was a mayor. Willie Brown was a sort of famous mayor in San Francisco. This was in San Francisco. And the name Will Brown is extremely common. I mean, they're 2 very common names. Let's just put it that way. Yeah. So they were into this whole thing about the 3 of them were 3 people, but they were 1 person. And it was this whole kind of rigmarole about operating and creating an identity through 3 people as 1 person, as 1 artist, 1 curator, which was interesting. And they did some great, cool projects. But it was helpful to me to attach my first name initial to my name as a professional to distinguish from this a little bit. But it's funny, I still get messages from people sometimes on Instagram. They're like, are you real Will Brown? And I'm like, yeah, I'm Will Brown. That's me. And I'll tell you this funny little story about it. But they're like, and after a couple of years, I just started taking credit for the stuff they were doing. People were like, oh, I loved your project. And I was like, yeah, it was really fun. And it was really interesting to like pretend to be, and they were like, yeah, cool. I don't live there anymore, right? And I don't talk to those people so much, but there was a period where I just said like, screw it. I'm just going to pretend that that's my art, because they took my name and there was no formal agreement or anything.
Totally. That seems like, yeah, I mean, you are Will Brown and of the name. So yeah. So now you didn't have to be the gay, queer eye, fake gay guy. Now you've got your own sort of pseudo secret fake life. So it all came around. That's kind of cool. I would think that you should have been like the straight curator. It could have been queer eye and the straight guy. I'm going to pitch you on that. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Cool. And you're not, so yeah, people say, are you the Will Brown? No, I'm a Will Brown. See, it fits that way too.
Exactly. And it's a good little conceptual twist there.
Yeah. Very, very deep, very perfect for an artist. Cool. And that's a good, because I mean, there's going to be like, there was a Whitney Brown, the Saturday Night Live guy. Michael Fox, there was too many, so he was going to be Michael A. Fox because that was his real middle initial, but then he became Michael J. Fox because he didn't want headlines like people saying, oh, Michael A. Fox or whatever. And so everybody's, very, very good name, like J.R. Tolkien or something, J.R.R. Good to have an initial, makes you more artistic. Cool. And so if you've noticed, I've been walking around again because my mom turned on the radio in the kitchen. I'm like, that's annoying. So I've come into her little den here. But we've been talking like an hour and 20 minutes, I guess, almost. So that's probably good for this episode. And well, thanks for talking, A. Will Brown. And usually, if there's a real podcast, I'd be like, and follow my sponsor or whatever. But I'm still working on my sponsors. But I'll put my affiliate links in the description below. And I guess people can look you. Should I ask if people want to look you? I can put your Instagram in the description if you want to be found or not. I don't know.
Sure. I can send that to you over Skype link here. And yeah, thanks for having me, or thanks for doing the lunch club talk and turning it into something else. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, just so people know, there is some website called Lunch Club where they match you with calls, and then so sometimes I meet people on Instagram to interview, and sometimes if I'm doing a lunch club, I'll say, hey, do you want to be interviewed and record it? Because if we would have had this conversation and not recorded it, it was a fun conversation, and then it would be lost, like in Rutger Hauer when he's given the speech at the end of Blade Runner. He'd be like, we lost all these things, these amazing things I've seen, or Ryan's rising above the moon or whatever. He's like, because he has to die because, I don't know, they're killing all the robots, and he's like, all these things will be lost like tears in rain. So I wouldn't want this conversation to disappear like tears. Have you seen Blade Runner?
I don't know if I've seen the full original.
Yeah, I don't know. No. I mean, there's so many. My dad's got a VHS tape downstairs that I think says director's cut. Like there was the original, then there's the director's. There's a million different versions. I should probably watch it again because I want to see the new one with Ryan Gosling. But he's Canadian too. And also, I was going to say earlier, like Ryan Reynolds, he married, or at least he was dating Alanis Morissette, and then Scarlett Johansson, and now he's with Blake Lively. So he went through Hollywood as well. And the one guy in Hollywood that surprises me that gets all the dates, and maybe he's just the one single guy or the one straight guy. What was his name? From that 70s show, kind of like he's not Asian. What is he? What is his ethnicity? Like sort of dark hair. You know who I'm talking about? The guy who just, for some reason, his name's like Vladimir or.
Wilmer.
Yeah.
Valderrama. Is that who that is?
Yeah.
He played Fez.
Yeah. Okay. So Fez, what was Fez supposed to be, like Indian or something?
I think so, but I think he's like South American.
Right. Well, he had some kind of exaggerated accent, much like, isn't there a character like that on The Big Bang? talks with some crazy accent. Not crazy. I'm going to sound racist no matter what I say. But anyways, for some reason, this Wilmer Valda, whatever, I don't think he's done anything since 70s show. Like, you wouldn't know. I can't even remember his name. But I think he's known as this sort of guy that's been dating all the hottest starlets. And they're like, how did that happen? But I don't know. Maybe it's because every actor in Hollywood is gay. I mean, because why not? Because they're all gay in theater school. Everyone. But then suddenly in Hollywood, nobody is. It's like, really? Anyways, that's my rant about that.
When your professional capacity is pretending to be other people, you may be any number of identities, and maybe, who knows how. That's a world that I met Joaquin Phoenix once, and I wanted to ask him a million questions about how weird it is to play all these roles so seriously. And then I was like, you know what? I can't imagine what's going on in that guy's mind sometimes, like, about being other people and how that informs your own sense of self. And I don't know. Seems strange.
It probably does affect you, because they say just the simple act of like smiling actually tricks your body into being happy. So you're supposed to do that. Or Tony Robbins talks a lot about that, like just change the way you stand and feel and whatever. So if you have to fake doing something for 3 months and get into this thing, it would probably mess with your head. Like what I saw some voice audition that I had to do today that I was mentioning yesterday to my dad about. They were looking for somebody to imitate Heath Ledger's Joker for some toys, like a doll that speaks or something. And my dad's like, oh yeah, isn't he? Somehow he was mixing a couple of Jokers, because he was like, isn't he dead? I'm like, yeah, he's the dead one. I still haven't seen that. He's like, you haven't? And I'm like, no, that was The Dark Knight. He's like, no, it's called Joker. I'm like, no, Joker's the new one. That's Joaquin Phoenix. He's alive. Heath Ledger played the Joker like 10 years ago. He's dead. What? So I just gave up trying to explain it to him. But I haven't seen either one. So who am I?
I have not seen the new one. I'm a little afraid of it, not from a like scary movie way, but in a like just, I don't know, interpersonally seems very, very dark, and I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Yeah, I know. I can't. It's funny. There's all this stuff that I used to love. Like, if you'd asked me a few years ago, what music do I like? Oh, I love Coldplay. I love, the stuff I listened to in the university dorm with my first girlfriend. It would be Enya and Sarah McLachlan, all these depressing things while I'm looking up at glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. But none of that can I handle now, because it just would destroy me, being like, oh, I wish I was there and I'm not with this person and all of that. So I don't even know if I could handle a Joker right now. But maybe at some point, once I'm dating Jennifer Lawrence, that'll be like, okay, I'm in a stable place now. I can go watch some dark stuff. Like that movie Mother that she was in with whoever the director is that she was dating briefly. What is his name? I don't know. I feel like he was doing well with that. I got to become a director or a curator, clearly. All right. Well, that's good for now. And thanks for being on my show. Talk to you later.